We're so delighted to have Dakota Dudney,
Yes.
I keep pronouncing it wrong, from Jewish Voice for Peace to present to us today. And Dakota has presented at Trinity last year, and it finally came around to where we could have Dakota come today. So welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here again at Trinity Lutheran, introducing Jewish Voice for Peace. We're just going to do a brief rundown of the organization, some ways that you can get involved. We have a little activity to provoke some deep thinking about some of the positioning of Jewish Voice for Peace and who we are and why we're uniquely positioned to do the work that we do. So Don, go ahead and get us started with the first slide. So Jewish Voice for Peace is an intergenerational grassroots organization. So we welcome all ages, we welcome Christians, Muslims, Jews. We are a Jewish-led and we center Jewish culture in our community events, but any denomination and any affiliation are welcome to join us as allies. It's just we reserve a certain percentage of leadership positions because it is a Jewish-centered, Jewish-led, Jewish voice organization. So we center Palestinian perspectives and we work with Palestinians to end the genocide in Gaza and that Israel is committing against the Palestinian people right now. So our work is mostly focused here in the US and it is focused on combating Zionism and anti-Semitism. So, a little early in the presentation, but we're going to go ahead and do an activity. So I want you to look around and we're going to talk briefly for about 5 minutes with your nearest neighbors. So like this could be a cluster group, you 3 folks here, you 3 folks here on the corner, you 4 folks here on the corner, and then you 3 folks here on the end. You 4 folks here in the back, and so if you would like to join them or them, it's up to you, what your preference is. And I want to start talking to your neighbors for about 5 to 7 minutes about what anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism mean to you, what you think it means to people in the world, and what you've heard in the media in reference to these 2 words. And I want you to also think about what it isn't. All right, I'm going to start a timer and go.
What do you think about this? I sort of know what I know because we've talked
real quick, right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. If you want, I don't know if you want to like turn the camera that direction. We're going to do some writing on the board after the Sorry.
It's not Not that I know of, so there's a bathroom right out there.
Great.
This is about coordinating. So she's not really interested in
Sorry,
Oh, yeah, we're good. All right, we got about a minute left, so anyone in your group who hasn't spoken up yet, let's center them.
So I think people will often use them interchangeably as a
I got one question.
You've done, we've done. Oh, since summer break. Yeah. Free from Saturday. This is, gosh, I would say 70-60% of the fun the first time I went to, but that was in.
Christian Science is
No, I mean, we're just gonna schedule it, like, yeah, I guess we get booked out pretty hard. Here, but with the, but I did get the notice, right? Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So
And so basically, this is a crisis Jewish voice
All right, folks, go ahead and wrap up the rest of your current sentence, and we're gonna disband our groups a little bit. And we're gonna come back into a larger group format. So if everyone would like to direct your attention over here, anyone who can't see, you folks over here along the wall, if you'd like to move against that wall. Or I think we might be able to present. Mike, can we present this board up here? Okay, I don't want to add another 20 minutes to our setup. But we're just going to do a round of popcorn. So now that we've got the juices, the thinking juices flowing, we're just going to name, just call out. Don't even worry about raising your hand. Don't worry about being right or wrong. These are naming your experiences, things that you have heard, things that other people have said to you. So don't worry about, right or wrong. So we're just gonna start by talking about anti-Semitism. Pardon my handwriting, I am not a teacher.
Looks good to me.
Leviathan.
Don't tell the other Jews that I don't know how to spell it. So whatever word associations come up in your mind, I just want to hear them. Like, let them rip.
Hate.
Hate. What else?
Fear.
Fear. What else?
Discrimination.
Discrimination. What else?
Slurs.
Great. Well, not great, but you know. What else?
Bigotry.
Bigotry. What are some behaviors, both in your community and globally, that might be related to this word?
Avoidance.
The Holocaust. What else? There was some overlapping over here that I didn't quite, I
Well, I
couldn't
said
just.
avoidance.
Avoidance, okay. What else?
Ghettos.
Ghettos. What else?
Firebombing.
What are some things that are maybe a little more subtle?
In Thessalonians, it says it shows that the end of the world is coming to an end.
Okay, so like belief systems
A little bit more than that, a little bit
maybe
more than
like
that, but yes.
global like viewpoints, paradigms about the world.
You mean like apocalyptic thinking, is that what you mean?
End times.
No, and if, in Thessalonians, it says, when the bones that were dry come back to life,
Mm-hmm.
it will symbol the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what are some maybe like global international behaviors? Silencing, okay. What else?
War.
War.
Separation.
Separation. Separation from who?
Each other. Us and them.
And then our own community.
Us be them, yes. All right, I think we're off to a really great start here. Obviously, we won't be able to get into every single aspect of it.
Word ignorance.
Ignorance. All right. So pivoting just a little bit. All right, we're gonna talk about Zionism. Same framework. All right, let it rip.
Colonialism.
Colonialism. What else?
Extremism.
Extremism. What else?
Government.
Government. What else?
Genocide.
Genocide. What else?
Fear.
More fear. Yeah.
Nationalism.
Nationalism. And how that might relate to fear. What else?
Hatred.
Hatred. What else?
Identity.
Anti-Jewish.
Anti-Jewish. Can you say one more word to clarify that, Jamie?
Values.
Anti-Jewish values. Okay. Nice. We're definitely gonna come back to that one. What else?
Identity. is one.
Identity. Identity and beliefs, right? What else?
Related to Christian Zionism, it's also anti-Christian.
Anti-Christian. Anti-Christian and anti-Christ-like.
Right, right.
I think on both complexity.
Complexity.
Anti-Semitism and Zionism, they're very complex issues.
Right, because we've got personal, we've got the interpersonal, we've got the biblical, we've got political, we've got, I mean, hell, we've got economic, we've got, it is very complex. We've got generational complexity.
How about
Well,
Satan?
and we've got global complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have historical?
Zionism as historical.
Or both?
Yep.
Supremacy.
We have Satan at work.
Mm-hmm. Satanic, what would be another word for
Evil.
For- nice? Satanic evil, maybe, again, anti-Christian, anti-Christ-like, right? Those antitheses. All right, so we're gonna tie these in together around what kind of work JBP does in combating both of these. And because there's such central core tenets to the way we organize and the way that we exist in the world and the way we were, the reason why we were built as an organization. So anti-Semitism, right, goes back hundreds, thousands maybe of years. And it's a relatively new word, but the concept, the anti-Jewish sentiment, right, has been manifest for much longer than the actual word itself. When we talk about Zionism, this is also a relatively new concept, but a little bit older than most people think of. It's maybe a couple of 100 years old. But as a word, first came about in the Balfour Agreements in 18-something or other. So history aside, how we're talking about how it manifests in current day and age with beliefs and identity, right? We both have this like really strong common thread of fear in both of them. So as Jewish people in Jewish Voice for Peace, we're working on decentering these fear links and the conflation, right? They do have a lot of things in common, right? They both have a historical context. They're both centered on Judaism, you know, especially when we're talking about like Jewish safety in response to the Holocaust. A lot of the arguments for the state of Israel and excuses, frankly, for the atrocities being committed in the state of Israel currently, you know, they come back to this, well, what about Jewish safety? What about, you know, what if another Holocaust? We need a safe place for the Jews. And that's a really hard argument to come back against, right? Like when you're talking with your friends, you know, you hear interviews in the media, you're, you know, around the Thanksgiving dinner table, that's a really hard place, right? Because then you're accused of, right? Every time you criticize the atrocities happening in Palestine, oh, you're anti-Semitic, right? Oh, you don't care about Jewish safety, right? So as, bringing it back to Jewish Voice for Peace, what we're doing is saying, well, not me, not in my name. I don't agree with that. I don't need my safety to be at the cost of lives, to be at the cost of somebody else's safety. I don't need my fears as a Jewish person to justify nationalism, hatred, war, violence, colonialism. And so as Jewish people in Jewish Voice for Peace, one of our core foundations of our organization is standing up loudly as Jewish people and saying, not me. You can't use me as an excuse for this. No. So, that being said, that's big picture. So how do we actually do it, right? What are the details? Go ahead, Don. Do you want to move this camera at all, Mike?
Yeah, and you want the screen share back?
Yeah.
Okay, let me, oops, sorry. Let's see, you are,
I think if you just click up top, where it says it's in the name, I think if you just click on that window, it'll switch over to that.
I can get it, try the dots, spotlight to share,
Okay, so we're gonna hit replace current share
there we go.
and then click right. No, yep. No, what is that?
Share. There we go. That should work. There.
Oh.
Ah.
Shoot.
This is why.
If you want to get back in here, Felicia.
Okay.
You can. Here, let me.
Did it jump her off?
I don't think so. Let me
All right,
remove
I'm
this
gonna send it to you again.
spotlight.
Disconnected. All right, so while we're figuring out the technology issues, we've got, there we go. All right, so it's in the name. So we are Jewish Voice, not Voices. That confused me at first. I wrote my email address wrong so many times. Jewish Voice for Peace, right? So as I mentioned earlier, we are Jewish-centered and Jewish-led. And so now that we've discussed a little bit about why that is, we also use our Jewish voices to center and uplift Palestinian voices. So it's sort of, if you've ever done any protesting or activism work that maybe has a threat of violence, you know that, you know, the young, able-bodied white people go to the front of the lines, and people who, you know, maybe can't clash with anti-protesters or, you know, can't risk their bodies, or who's, you know, would be more subject to harm from the police, you know, they step back, and, you know, the young, strong people step forward, right? So that's us. That's the Jewish people stepping forward and being like, we are giving them space to be louder while we protect and amplify. So it's, you know, when we talk about centering, it can be a little complicated, right? Because we do focus on our Palestinian partners, but the Jewish perspective is also co-centered because we're uniquely positioned here, right? To speak out against anti-Semitism and to speak out against Zionism because, you know, we're being literally used as an excuse. So, and then for peace, right, the peace part, immediate ceasefire, no questions asked. There's no negotiations, there's no stepping forward, there's no coming to the table without an immediate ceasefire. We've seen this time and time again across many, many nations, across many, many conflicts, across many, many nationalities and ethnicities, and whether it's race or religion or whatever is at the core of the conflict, nothing is being talked about in good faith until there's a ceasefire. And so, so our vision is a world where all people, not just Palestinians, not just Jews, where all people are free to pursue, you know, the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? These core tenets that supposedly America was built on. We are fighting for that globally, internationally, across every peoples, not just here in the US, so that is the focus of most of our work is in the US, because that's where we have the most power, that is where our community, that is where our base is built. I mentioned some of our history earlier. We were formed in the San Francisco Bay Area, like most good activist groups. I want to say it was 86, 88. So JVP is about as old as I am. Don't hold it against me. But even beyond the formation of Jewish Voice for Peace, there's a conceit in Jewish culture called Tikkun Olam. And this is the world betterment that is a core central tenet of Jewish culture. So even beyond the formation of Jewish Voice for Peace, the Jewish cultural heritage behind this fight, you know, is as old as Judaism itself. So core tenets of Judaism that like underline, you know, for thousands of years, you know, the preservation of life. I can't remember the Hebrew word for it right now. Tikkun Olam, world betterment, creating safety for marginalized people, protecting those who have less privilege or who are weaker than you, centering those who have more experience in the area that you're just a visitor to. These are core tenets that, you know, thread throughout Judaism, not just Jewish Voice for Peace. And in creating Jewish Voice for Peace, the creator said, okay, this is values alignment. Where was it?
these are Jewish values, right? These are not just activist values, these are not just democratic or liberal values, these are Jewish values that go back thousands of years. And so we're gonna integrate those. What do those look like in the modern era? What do those look like right now while a genocide is literally being crafted, perpetuated in our names, right? So the core values of, accountability to our Palestinian partners and the commitment to Judaism and to justice. While these are core tenets that, like I said, go back thousands of years, how are they looking nowadays? So one of our core values as a commitment to Judaism, for instance, is, aside from the activism, which is core and central, we have a lot of community events. If you've ever been to one of our community Shabbats, our local JVP pod every 2 months hosts an open to the community night of worship, so our Sabbath on Friday night and in the city park, and sort of extracting publicly Judaism from Zionism and creating a cultural thread, a spiritual thread, a Jewish thread that is actively and loudly anti-Zionist, because most synagogues in the area are unfortunately very Zionist. And the conflict with a lot of our Jewish values makes worshiping at these synagogues prohibitive for a lot of people. And so in nurturing the spiritual side of our community, that is also one of our deep commitments in our group. Some numbers, for those who like numbers. We are a very large organization as far as these things go. So these are numbers from 2024, and every year that the current presidency remains, those numbers increase by about 50% every year, just given the last couple of years that we have data from. So we're looking to reach almost 1 million members here in about 3 years. We have 44 states with local organizing groups and 83 cities with local groups. So we have a chapter, well, it's not a chapter, it's a pod, which has slightly different roles, here in northern Colorado. And our little pod is only 2 years old. But when we started up our pod, they said we actually can't onboard you as a chapter because we have so many people interested in starting chapters right now that at a national level, we're kind of overwhelmed with paperwork. Would you mind just being a pod for a second? And we said, yeah, sure. So, there's less money, but there's also less rules.
Is the Boulder Group a chapter?
The Boulder Group is a chapter, yes. So as Jamie just mentioned, we have our mentor sister group down it's a joint group between Denver and Boulder. And as you can imagine, in a bigger city like Denver, they have much more membership. Their chapter is also a lot older than ours. I think they've been up and going for about 8 years. So some of the ways that JVP takes action, both locally, nationally, and internationally, and ways that if you are interested in becoming involved with JVP, that there's many levels and many avenues of becoming involved. So becoming a member, super easy. You just hand JVP $18 and your email address. Done.
National, right?
National.
Yeah, we don't take money ourselves.
Yeah, our local pod, because we're a pod, not a chapter, as well as some other financial bookkeeping reasons, we don't have members' dues. National says $18, and you can call yourself JVP all you want. You're also welcome to become a supporter without becoming a member. So it is a 501c3. It is a tax-deductible donation. The average donation is about $60, but that adds up across the world, across the United States, across Colorado, even within northern Colorado. We have an avenue on the website, so it's jvp.org, to donate without becoming a member, without giving away your email address, without signing up for any lists, anything like that. You just say, you know, I would like to contribute, and that's where I'm at right now. We'll come back to focus areas here on the next slide. Joining our chapter. So I'm one of the founding members of our JVP pod here in Northern Colorado. Like I said, we're about 2 years old. We signed our charter agreement. It was just 5 of us friends who, you know, are all Jewish or hold some alignment with Jewish values, or, you know, looked out at the world and said, you know, I would like to investigate my relationship with Judaism outside of Zionism. And we got together, and a couple of us had already heard about JVP, a couple of us hadn't, and said, yeah, we're gonna do this. And we just got together and said, okay, now that we've signed the papers, now what? And so every 2 weeks we get together and we have a strategy meeting that is open to all onboarded members. And we spitball ideas, we flesh out ideas that are currently in the works. We have events such as the Community Shabbat every 2 months. This month coming up, we will also be having a Tashlich ritual, which is a casting away of sins for Yom Kippur, which is the Jewish Day of Atonement. It's going to be, as is, you know, culturally, historically grounded, a very deeply introspective time and very important to our community and the spirituality of practicing Jews. But it is also welcome, you know, for anyone else who feels a resonance with that kind of need right now, to atone, to reflect in community and in connection. We have other fun things. So we had a zine making event. For those of you that don't know, zine is short for a magazine, and it's a single page that you fold in a certain way, and then it opens up into a little 4-page booklet. And it's a cheap and easy way to share information or art that you can just print on your home computer and pass out. You know, they're little pocket size, so easy to, you know, hand out at the bus stop or at your community center or in your neighborhood. So we had a zine making event. So we have a couple of different styles of activities. We have a couple of different types of engagement. You know, we center activism work. So we do a lot of letter writing and contacting our senators. And we're currently investigating a local boycott, divestment, sanctions campaign. And we're still in the research phase of that. So it's not just, you know, marching with a sign necessarily, but we do that sometimes too, just for, you know, for old time's sake. So as I said earlier, we have those focus areas. We have these different types of activities, these different ways of engagement, these different ways of protesting and supporting Palestinians through the ongoing genocide. So the boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign that I mentioned just now, we also contact our senators and House of Representatives. So sometimes we have just like, you know, hanging out in a room in the library and supporting each other, making phone calls. You know, sometimes we'll write scripts, make it super easy. You know, some of us are new to this kind of work and we don't necessarily know what to say. What do I say if I actually get a senator on the phone, you know? And so we support each other and we come up with ideas around like what that could look like, and support each other also in not feeling so alone, right? Because sometimes this work can feel a little alienating. You know, you feel like you're the only voice at the Thanksgiving table, or the only, you know, person on your cul-de-sac, or the only person in the room that thinks these things, that sees these things. And so coming together as a group and just seeing other people who think the way that you do can feel really hopeful. And then organizing protests and actions on a local level. So we are currently focused on supporting other local groups in more street actions. So if you are aware of the Thursdays and Saturdays on Mulberry and College, we are not actively co-organizers, but those are some of the events that we support. And we encourage our members to show up, wearing, visibly Jewish. We have these T-shirts for our members, so you do get a cute little T-shirt. We're thinking about designing one that says, not in our name, not in her name, not in his name, for our Christian allies.
Well, there's more Christian Zionists than Jews in the world, right? So.
Yeah.
That too.
And I think this goes back to what you were mentioning about some of the biblical passages that folks have used to leverage some of their arguments around, the end times and the end of days, without considering the context of which that was written, or, other conflicting accounts, in other passages. So if you're interested in joining us, I'll leave this page up here. This is our final slide. If you want to come and write some of this contact information down. The website, that is our national organization, as well as our national email address. This is if you want to become a national member or just make a donation without becoming a member. Our local email address, Northern Colorado Jewish Voice for Peace. So we do have a little onboarding form, just asks you a little bit about yourself, your history, your background, your skills that you might want to leverage. If you're like an art teacher and you want to hold an art class, if you want to host our next zine making workshop. And then once you go through and fill out that form, me or Don will actually contact you to have a conversation reviewing some of those answers and clear up any, existing questions that you might have about joining the conversation. And then we have a Discord server, which is, Don, how would you describe a Discord server to folks who aren't as tech savvy as you
Well, I
and
know,
me?
do people remember the old bulletin boards, in the old days of computers? It's basically like a bulletin board, you put up messages and there's different sections of the bulletin board that are, yeah. And then you put up a message and somebody can reply to it and so on. And the things roll through and they automatically delete after some point in time.
Yeah, so we have different segments for different actions, different projects, different holidays, to kind of keep the conversation organized. And then it's an ongoing conversation, and it looks just like a regular old text message once you're in the conversation, and then there's just some extra organization over on the side. So that's how we do most of our organizing and conversation, and keeping people up to date on our events outside of our bi-weekly meetings. And then if you're just interested in joining us as a community member, you say, I don't want to onboard, I don't want to be a national member, but I want to show up to like a protest every now and again, I'm interested in the Tashlik ritual, I'm interested in like maybe joining for the Passover Seder when we have one. You can follow us on Instagram. Jewish Voice for Peace is the national, and then noco.jvp is our local pod. And that's where we put out most of our advertising and information around community events. I would say, aside from the Shabbat, we also have just a casual coffee and conversation on alternating months from the Shabbat. Usually those are at Wolverine, and it's just anywhere between 5 and 10 of us just getting together and, reminding each other we're not alone in this. So, and those are open to the community, but you wouldn't find out about them unless you're on our Instagram, so. All right, so we have 4 minutes for questions.
I should, but I haven't formulated it yet.
Okay, well, Claudia was telling me that, and maybe a lot of people are, she's really confused about the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right,
yeah,
accurate.
okay.
Yeah, it is a complex issue, and it is one that, we don't even have questions, right? Because it's so big, it feels so overwhelming, like I don't even know where to start asking, right? I don't even have a specific question, I feel hazy on the topic in general, right? One of the things that JVP offers on their website right here is a lot of really great resources. They have a really well-organized, very intuitive, easy to understand archive of articles explaining JVP's position on the history, October 7th, and ongoing conflicts. And they also have like a news segment that is more of an op-ed segment because it's like a newsletter that goes out to members and community members and people who have signed up called The Wire. And so it's a combination of covering events as well as JVP's perspectives on events. Any mutual aid, that's blocked from reaching Palestine, JVP will have like a little write-up on their website, and then they'll codify it into The Wire to send out. They cover, anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism and how the roots of these as cultural concepts feed into the current conflict, the current genocide. And they also have a lot of really great resources on maybe how to talk to your family about these issues in a way that is easy to understand and rooted in shared perspective rather than fighting, right? And if you join JVP as a member, we have trainings on those things as well. Trainings on how to discuss the Israeli committed genocide against the Palestinian people, ways to discuss anti-Semitism with your Christian neighbors, with your Jewish neighbors, with your atheist neighbors, ways to discuss, what does Zionism and what does anti-Zionism mean when people start accusing you of anti-Semitism. We have trainings on those kinds of things, little webinars that you zoom into that are free. You just pay the little $18 at the top of the year, and I think we get those trainings about once every 2 or 3 weeks, and then some of them repeat as well. I know that kind of answers your question a little sideways, but 4 minutes is not nearly enough.
For people that have a little time and are interested in going into the history, I caught the most of an episode on NPR yesterday, and it's Trueline, Trueline, and you can do a search on NPR, Trueline History of Palestine. It's the most thorough history I've ever heard. Talks about Ariel Sharon and his massacres of Muslims, and it talks about just a whole history that we often don't hear. I was shocked that it was airing in America. So that might be really helpful if you're not real familiar. Yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions for me about JVP, about our local group, about our national group? Yeah, Mike?
What time do you meet in the park?
So our next one is going to be.
It's around sundown, is that it?
Oh, what time? Or, yeah, so we have been meeting at 6 to 8 is the event. Right around December, I think, we were welcome to start hosting here in the hall, so that we didn't freeze everyone out and get everyone pneumonia on top of, so.
And then you have it once a month, did you say?
It's every other month.
Every
So
other
we
month. Oh.
just had one in August, so September we're taking off, I believe. Jamie, would you mind pulling up the calendar to double check when our next one is?
We normally do it in odd months, don't we?
Yes, we do it in every other month. I just wanted
And
to.
we're in an odd month.
Right, September is an odd month.
But we might, but because of Tashlich, we're gonna do Tashlich instead, is that it?
So not do it in September because of the holiday?
Well, we also have because we're such a small group, we're trying to use our energy wisely. And so we kind of agreed that every other month was just more sustainable than trying to force every single month. Someday, when we have a larger group and more members, we would love to do one every month. Hell, I would love to do one every 2 months or every 2 weeks. but
No,
not yet.
where do you worship for Rosh Hashanah?
Again, we we don't have like a centralized like synagogue or congregation right now. Har Shalom is pretty Zionist for most of our tastes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so last year we had a Tashlich ritual. Most of our members observed, and this works for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur specifically because they're such introspective holidays. Most people worship at home or with a few select loved ones. The Tashlich ritual, we had about 12 people, members of JVP and the community on the riverbank of the Pruder, and just for that ritual specifically. But the high holy days in between, the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, most people maintain some sort of observance in their homes right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know where the calendar is, that's
Okay.
in Discord.
Does anyone else, we are 2 minutes over, I don't know if we need to vacate the room for the next group?
We don't need to vacate the room. I
Okay.
know Mike had a question too.
Yeah, Mike, what's up?
You might have answered it. I was just curious if you've had much success in your conversations with other synagogues and people like of different minds. Do you have experience of people changing their minds about this, or is it more you're finding people who maybe aren't as familiar with it, and that's the best way to grow and have a better change?
Yeah, so let me see if I understand your question by renaming it. So you're asking if we as JVP and perhaps me as an individual have had experience what it looks like when people do change their minds, or if people change their minds.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you're interacting with some of these churches and there's conversations, there's different viewpoints, you know, are you able to do you ever see people actually who formally like disagreed with you and then they come around and they're like, okay, you know, I see your point now, maybe I'll join, or at least are more supportive, or maybe it goes the opposite direction where there's like more distance growing, like.
So the wonderful thing about humans is we are very malleable, we are very adaptable, but we're also very stubborn, right? And so there is a different strategies, right? Depending on how deeply entrenched in Zionist philosophy somebody is, right? We are not going up against neo-Nazis and trying to convince them of our viewpoint. It's just not gonna happen. You know, it's talking to a brick wall at that point. But my mother, on the other hand, I've been having an ongoing conversation with her, and she's what I would consider culturally Zionist. She's not devout, she doesn't understand the history, she doesn't even go to synagogue anymore now that I've left the house. Her relationship with Judaism in general is very casual, you know, she's a high holy day Jew. Or what we would call a Christmas, Easter Christian. And so, but we've been having an ongoing conversation for the last 2 years, ever since October 7th, about what Zionism means to her and the history of Zionism and the context of it. Because when I first asked her, she's like, no, yes, I believe that the state of Israel should exist. I also don't believe that they should be murdering people. I'm like, okay, great start. And then we continued the conversation about, okay, where does that support for Israel come from? And because she's my mother and because we have an open and honest and intimate relationship, I was able to have a very different conversation with her than I would with somebody walking up Har Shalom, or than I would with somebody in the grocery store or my neighbor. And those conversations, and whether they are successful or not, is often founded on the context of that relationship. So to answer your question, unfortunately, there is no right answer. I have had experiences where people say, oh, that makes sense. Zionism, the way you've explained it to me and the way I now understand it based off of my own research that you've encouraged me to do is kind of messed up. And then I've had some people say, well, I need to think about it. and then I don't hear from them for 9 months.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
There's a film that's gonna be shown next month, I believe, at the Lyric. The name of it is Israelism, and it's from the viewpoint of kids who were raised in Zionist households, Jewish Zionist households. And it talks about how afraid they were and how proud they were to have a Jewish homeland and all that. And then they started talking to Palestinian people and hearing their stories. And so it just goes through their journey together, and it's really a great film to explain from, you know, a certain point of view, how they became more aware of other things too. Not giving up their Judaism or anything like that.
And I think that perspective specifically is really interesting in a lot of ways, because Zionism becomes very cultural, even within synagogues and within our Jewish upbringing. Like, I remember in my synagogue, like, praying for Israel on a regular basis and having fundraisers for Israel. And there's a holiday that is the birth date of the trees that dates back, you know, probably thousands of years, but in modern days it's become kind of like a Jewish birthday. And in the even more modern days, you buy a tree and you plant it in Israel. And it's only within the last couple of years that I'm learning, those trees we were buying to plant in Israel were being used to colonize Palestinian farmland. Yeah.
And they weren't even native trees, right? A lot of them were pine trees and stuff.
I don't know, I was 12.
Well, and the reason they needed trees was they cut them all down.
Right.
The British did.
Right.
Cut all the trees down, and then they said, this is a land without trees.
Yeah. Oh, nobody's taking care of this land. Look at it.
Right.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a picture of this. If anyone else wants to, let me see a hand real quick before I erase it. There are some words that I abbreviated.
Well, I'm going to say that Palestinians are Semitic people also. And nobody seems to, they have forgotten that.
Right. We had a really interesting teach-in. It was just a quick 15, 20-minute talk in front of our last Shabbat, or maybe it was 2 Shabbats ago. And we talked about the origins of the word and the origins of anti-Semitism being used, and sort of the word being like claimed and abused to bolster Zionism. And the Semites as a people, right, cover Arabs, most Middle Eastern people, as well as Jews, and some people don't identify, some Jewish people don't identify as Semites, because they're like, well, I'm white, I'm European, you know, and so in using, like, identifying with Semites, like, I'm identifying with a group of people that I don't have shared experience with. Like, I grew up in America, not the Middle East. You know, I have white skin, which means that the world treats me a little different than other people's. So, but as a term, right, being used to describe a certain type of bigotry, right, it's gotten a little, it's slid away. That's what language does, right?
Yeah, it's used like anti-Jewish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time and attention.